second phase of Al Yamama, worth $1 billion more 2 years later. He was becoming British Aerospace's best salesman. But he was also a public official, son of the customer who'd signed the deal. Yet, as Panorama discovered, even bigger payments were soon being wired into accounts controlled by Bandar.
Here, let me show you what those payments amounted to. This much. £120 million a year, give or take a few million. And it went on for at least 10 years. So that's over £1 billion in total.
And the payments were actually written into the Al Yamama contract. They were in secret annexes called letters of offer and acceptance. Support services is how the payments were described.
And Prince Bandar didn't just get huge sums of money. The S-fighter pilot got to run his own plane, courtesy of the Al Yamama deal, British Aerospace and the British government. It wasn't one of these, a small executive jet which costs around £6 million. It wasn't even one of these, a larger executive jet. This one would set you back around £15 million or so.
No, Bandar got a plane even bigger than one of these. An Airbus long-range jet, which cost around £75 million 8 years ago. It took a year to fit it out to his personal specifications.
Tell us about the plane.
It's a small aircraft. Well, I tell a fib. It is an Airbus 340. It has its own kitchen. It has a large lounge, where he sits. It's a very luxurious fit of aircraft, very well appointed.
Bandar's Airbus, registration H724, has been seen all over the globe. It's painted in the blue and white colours of his favourite American football team, the Dallas Cowboys. There have been some great parties on board for presidents and kings. It's become a bit of a legend amongst plane spotters all over the world. They've logged it from Beijing to Barcelona and just about everywhere in between.
When I last looked at the records on the aircraft, it's been all over the world, but he, on an average year over the first 8 years, it was to the moon and back and around the globe 3 times every year.
And while Bandar was mixing business with pleasure, it was kickbacks from Al Yamama which paid, amongst other things, to run the plane. For years, successive governments have denied to Parliament any commissions had been paid to any Saudi officials. British Aerospace, now called BAE, consistently issued denials too.
I can only assure you that we, and I believe most companies, are not in the business of making payments to the members of any government.
But as we discovered, Bandar has been receiving millions of pounds via BAE over the years, cash and travelling expenses.
This is how it worked. Our well-placed sources had confirmed to Panorama that every 3 months a letter would be sent from Bandar's office to the Ministry of Defence.
It reminded them it was time to make the payments for support services authorised under the Al Yamama contract. The MOD would notify British Aerospace, who then wired the money into 2 accounts, 30 million into one and hundreds of thousands for Bandar's plane into the other. In the vaults at the SFO, they were amassing the evidence of these payments. They seized documents from Aerospace, and last autumn they took computer records from the MOD and questioned high-level civil servants. The money trail led abroad, to Europe and across the Atlantic. And where did the money sent by BAE, government authority, go to in America? Well, to Washington, and some of those Saudi embassy accounts at Riggs Bank that David Caruso had been investigating. Accounts he confirmed Prince Bandar used as a personal piggy bank.
There wasn't a distinction between the account of the embassy or official government accounts, as we would call them, and the account of the royal family.
So you discovered that Prince Bandar was taking money for his own personal use out of accounts that seemed to be accounts belonging to his government?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that was a common practice. And that was a practice, from my understanding, that had gone on for years and years.
And large sums of money involved?
Yeah, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars.
Most of the money was wired into the Saudi Ministry of Defense and Aviation account. In reality, it might have been better described as a conduit to Bandar.
So money was coming into the Ministry of Defense and Aviation account and coming out for Prince Bandar and his family?
Yes, and it also was used for other embassy operations as well. Again, but it seemed to be, if you picture the accounts as a spider web, that was a wheel, a hub and spoke, that was the hub. And then from that account, money would be transferred to other accounts.
We obtained the details of one striking example from an internal Rigsbank document. It shows that though the account was in the name of a Saudi ministry, Bandar took a sum out for himself.
It happened, it says here, in the summer of 2003, when $17 million were transferred from the account of the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Defense and Aviation and ended up in the hands of Prince Bandar's personal architect. I understand that out of that account, for example, came large sums, some 17 million, which went to Prince Bandar's architect in Saudi Arabia.
We were told that some of the funds from the accounts were being used to build a home, I believe, for the prince in Saudi.
A home or a palace?
Well, a palace, yeah. I would imagine a palace with that type of money, yeah.
But when Prince Bandar was tackled on American television about his country's reputation for corruption, he shrugged it off.
Now, if you tell me that building this whole country and spending 350 billion out of 400 billion, that we had misused or get corrupted with 50 billion, I'll tell you yes, but I'll take that any time.
Rigsbank could never get satisfactory answers from Bandar or his embassy, so they closed down all their accounts. Within months, the prince had resigned as ambassador for personal reasons and headed back to Saudi. The SFO needed to establish if the payments Bandar received via BAE and the MOD were actually illegal. These had continued well beyond 2002, when UK law was changed after the Blair government signed up to an international anti-bribery convention at the OECD. The government's made a big deal of its fight against corruption, but the new law still has loopholes. Illegal or not, payments like the Al Yamama kickbacks are what everyone thought it signed up to outlaw. So what do leading legal experts think, having examined what we found?
How would you classify those payments?
Well, those payments, on the face of it, are straightforward bribes as defined by the Anti-Bribery Convention.
No doubt about that.
There's no doubt about it at all. Senior officials, a minister, it's quite plain that he meets the test of who is an official, a foreign official, for the purpose of the OECD Convention.
As the SFO uncovered the payments made to Bandar and other Saudi middlemen, the government got nervous. So did the prince who'd benefited most from the deal. He had a new job now, head of Saudi National Security. The plane paid for by Al Yamama off. Did the itinerary reveal its mission was to scupper the investigation? Well, we've uncovered some curious coincidences. Bandar headed first for England. He knew he had a powerful weapon. The third phase of the Al Yamama deal worth £20 billion was in the process of negotiation.
Prince Bandar's plane's been seen many times in Britain. Plane spotters snapped it. And those same plane spotters' logs show that, interestingly enough, Prince Bandar was here at Brize Norton twice last autumn, in October and again in November. And this was just at the time that, behind the scenes, the government was agonising over what to do about the SFO investigation.
The British ministers had assured the Saudis the investigation was going nowhere. But the SFO, it seemed, just hadn't got the message.
We traced evidence to Switzerland, we traced money to Switzerland, and it was at that stage that the representations were made.
Representations from Saudi Arabia?
So I understand.
Next stop for Bandar's S was Switzerland. A spotter snapped it in Basel on November the 15th.
We do not definitely know why it was here, but it was indeed very lovely to get it here.
The SFO had asked the Swiss authorities for details of bank accounts belonging to business managers who act for Bandar and his father. The Saudis were furious.
the fact that they may be looking at personal records of some of the Saudi royal family was unacceptable. And that's where I think Banda was pressed into